everyone, and welcome to another episode of Conversations with Coaches. My name is Luba Diasamidze. I'm the founder and director of Upthink Coaching. We do ICF accredited coach training programs, mentor coaching, supervision, leadership development. And this is my passion project where I meet coaches working in different niches and using different approaches in coaching from all over the world. And today I'm very happy to say hi to Jillian Eichel-Dobray. Hi, Jillian.
Hi, Luba. It's so good to be here. Thank you for having me.
It's a total pleasure. Tonight, we are going to talk about couples coaching and total disclosure. I think we don't do so many live coaching topics, right? I think quite a few of the sessions that I had as part of this series were around leadership coaching or emotional intelligence for leaders or organizational or family business. So they were more like business-like, although we touched upon several approaches, not necessarily niches, but approaches that can be used with a wider audience. But I think we did not have so many episodes dedicated to more like our day-to-day life and coaching for that. So I'm super excited to have this episode. Jillian, could you please introduce yourself and what you do?
Yes, I'd be happy to. My name Jillian Eichel-Dobray, and I am a professional certified coach through ICF, and I'm also what's called an LCPC. It's a licensed clinical professional counselor in the state of Illinois. So I have experience as a therapist, and I was first licensed about 22-ish years ago. And then I've been doing coaching for about 17, 18 years and certified with ICF. I don't remember, like 8, 9 years or so. And I work with individuals. I do a lot of life coaching. I work with couples. I do a lot of couples coaching. And more recently, I added in premarital coaching into my business, which I love doing. I've worked with teams. So through my career, I've led workshops, trainings, retreats. I've worked with women, men, salespeople, entrepreneurs. So I really have a kind of a wide experience, but I've recently been focusing on couples because it's so satisfying.
Tell me more about this.
Yeah.
Why is this so satisfying?
Okay. Yeah, I'll share a little personal too, because when I was a therapist, and then when I first entered into the coaching world, I was also myself single. And I had started to manage a program for singles, so singles coaching, and it was truly life-changing for me. And I got to really like live a singles life very, very differently than I think I had been if I hadn't um, been, developing these coaching skills and also understanding what does it take for a single person to have a really great life and to navigate dating in a different way. So I did a lot of singles coaching, and then just through my own evolution, maturation, I began to work with couples. I also recently got married myself, and felt like I had even a more kind of embodied experience of what it meant to love, but also to combine lives together. Um, and I think, why I love doing this so much is that, so like it's a core human need to be loved. Not everybody wants to be in a couple or a partnership or date, and I think also too, it's really changed since the pandemic. We're kind of more used to being alone, but there's also a big loneliness epidemic. And so I feel like it's so effective, to be able to help a couple um, learn like a few skills in a session that can help them feel truly understood and partnered with their partner, um, is like, I mean, it's so worth the money. You think about what people invest in things in their life, and, the fact that like a handful of coaching sessions can totally change a trajectory of a relationship is very meaningful.
I love seeing your energy when you talk about this. And I'm saying this because I may imagine it is really energy consuming. I'm a team coach and I
Yeah.
work with teams, and I know that every kind of group dynamics, even if it's a team of two, it is complex, right? And
Yeah.
I remember
Yes.
doing a team coaching session for a couple in a family business, and they had so many elephants in the room. And I was a newer coach back then. So that was like, I don't know, 5, 6 years ago. And
Mhm.
I was having their session,
Yeah.
and there was that awkward silence. And I thought, oh my God, what have I done? Are they going to break up
Mm.
after this session? Are they going to end their business? Like,
Mm.
the amount of tension is,
Yeah.
or maybe quite big, right? And I love seeing the excitement in your voice
Yeah.
when you talk about this, because I think it's really not possible to do this work well if you are not nourished from this work.
Yeah, I totally agree. And also can understand like doing the business coaching for a couple or families in a business is because it's focused on the business, but yet there's so many of those interpersonal dynamics and family system issues that may or may not be comfortable addressing. But that is a difference with the with couples coaching. It's like that's why we are there. So there is more of a space for it to come up. But it's kind of scary. Like it's definitely a roller coaster. Because you are managing, I'm managing when I'm doing the couples work, like two people. So you've got to be present to both people, actually three people, because it's them and then yourself. So, if I can share just an experience I had last night
If
with
you have
a
comfortable
couple.
sharing it, yes.
Yeah, a new couple. So I do a lot of premarital work, which I think is really such a great investment for people before they get married, like right when they get engaged. I've, had a lot of couples that I've seen for that process. And last night, it's like the one fight that this couple was having that kept emerging through their whole relationship. You could just see that they wanted to just sort of like just get the skill without really like digging into what was happening underneath. And it was a topic I won't share too much, but
Of
it was a
course.
topic that many people get divorced over. Many people break up over, and I'm sitting there in the session thinking like, oh my God, they could break up from this. Like that would be so sad. Like, but to have I also really believe that if you surface these things during the engagement period, and get it out and really be with that threat of breaking up can help you really be stronger. So I was thinking they might have broken up, but then having, being able to soothe myself to hold a space and really believe in the possibility that this could be worked out. One of the aspects of coaching is asking powerful questions. So being able to, there's with couples coaching, it's really a pairing of asking powerful questions, but also reflecting. And that is a skill that I really call upon is my ability to reflect back what I believe is going on in the inner world. So doing both of those things led to a breakthrough for one of the people. And this person in the couple accessed something that they never knew was there, which made all the difference. They were both crying and understanding each other, had a whole new way to view the problem that they were facing. And I just left the session like, yay, this is why I do this.
Oh,
So
that's
I felt
amazing.
it felt really good.
I think it takes a lot of courage for clients to decide to hire a premarital coach, especially when they might be aware that certain things will surface, and
Yeah.
we don't know if our relationship can hold that. So
Yeah,
tell me more about your clients. So like, what prompts them this idea to look for a premarital coach?
great question. I would say probably more of the people I get referred to are going through a lot of conflict. Um,
Mm.
yeah, possibly more than half of the couples, the premarital couples that I work with, are going through a conflict, and they are just like looking like they're kind of like at a low, and they know that they need help. Um, some some want to build the best relationship that they can, and so they know that, or they're very familiar with coaching or therapy, like they're used to getting help.
Mhm.
And so they just know that this is something that would be helpful to building like the strongest relationship they can. So I would say it's divided, probably more so with folks who are struggling. Um, it's also mostly word of mouth. So my couples usually share my information with friends who are also struggling. So I would say those two. I mean, it's great when you can get a client who understands the importance of building skills like before there's a problem.
Mhm.
And then also with couples who I also have a lot of clients who are couples who are married, and they meet with me like once a month as like a tune-up. And that provides a space to get out of the logistics of their lives to just
Yeah.
meet. And then they usually don't have an agenda. It's just sort of like the routine of once a month allows them to see whatever it is that's coming up there for the relationship. Maybe it's parenting concerns, or their kids have left the nest, and now it's like, what do we do now?
Mm.
Like, who are you? They're sort of left with each other, and they want to develop a vision for moving forward.
Yeah. How is this different from couples therapy? Because I think you were one of my top choices for this episode because you're both a credentialed coach and an experienced therapist,
Yeah.
right? So the work that you do with couples in therapy and in coaching, well, I understand, right? Like the difference between the modalities, but I also assume there might be an overlap or that your experience in therapy could be such a valuable, resource when you do coaching. How does
Yeah.
that work?
That's a great question. I'm gonna sort of wander around that question to sort through the answer, because I think it's hard for me to separate out because I've worked in both. Um, I would say probably couples therapy, you're really like there's like a real problem. Um, it and actually let me first say that I have not formally done couples therapy. So when I worked as a therapist, I had the training, with any kind of counseling degree and also certification, you're required to have some knowledge for couples work, family work, really for everything. But I never focused on the couples work until I had this whole coaching experience. So I think for how I would need to answer that question is that I bring all of my skills. And I think because I do have the therapy training and skills, I'm more comfortable with some of the bigger problems.
I was really curious when I was listening to you. What about coaches who do not have this experience with therapy or a counseling degree like you do, but they still want to work with couples? What skills do they need to learn, or maybe what additional training do they need to take to prepare themselves for this work? Or will just a simple like a standard ICF training be enough in the ICF core competency model? So what are your thoughts on this?
That's a great question. I think just the coaching training in terms of having, presence, empathy, being able to reflect back, asking questions, very, very helpful. However, when it comes to couples, just like it would be when it comes to teams, I think it's good to have some models of what works with couples, and what are sort of the habits that couples need to get into in order to have a long-term successful relationship. I really recommend the Gottman method. There's a book, actually, I have it right here. I think this book, Seven Principles, it's a really very, very well researched, just it's a great guide. I think so doing, and I'm sure there's a lot of training specific to couples coaching, but to have a sort of framework because it's to understand that, oh, couples that start up with, criticism or contempt, that actually is an indicator of divorce. So you want to have that like body of knowledge so that when you are working with couples, you can hear those things, sort of pause the session, do a little bit of education. And that's actually a lot of what I do is I provide a lot of education so that couples understand what it is they're doing that will work and what it is they're doing that will not lead to satisfaction and success. Much like with team coaching, right? Because there's certain things that help to build a team and certain things that don't. So I think
Yes.
the bottom line answer to that is to definitely do some of your own reading or to take some trainings that are just focused specifically for couples.
Right. Could
So,
you unpack this framework a little bit? It sounded really interesting. For example, when I deliver a coach training in our program, I always introduce the stages of change, the trans
mm,
theoretical model of change, right? So, because when a person comes to coaching, they may not be even aware which stage of change they're at, right? And they think
yeah.
or they expect that the change is going to happen overnight, whereas it's not how change happens and it's not linear either, right? So the more a coach is aware of the whole change process and different stages, the better they can probably support their client, at least discover where they are and set their expectations in a way so that the client does not end up disappointed. And I'm hearing like this framework that you are mentioning, it also helps couples to maybe see where they are, you know, and maybe where they need to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what you're naming is like how do you set expectations? So how do you provide the context and the frame that's gonna and the structure that's gonna be supporting a client, which helps them get a lot of security and trust. Um, so let me share a little bit about how I do that with couples. So
Please.
the first thing, and this is, with any kind of client, but also with couples, is that I have my own, intake form where before I first meet with them, they're working together to name um, what they're most proud of as a couple, what they love about their relationship, what their challenges are right now, and then also what they want to get out of coaching. And that often, just like for any individual coaching or executive coaching, sometimes those early sessions are really focused on what is the outcome that we want. And that could take a while, to really to clarify their expectations and what the actual goal is. And I always do that and I tell them why we're doing it so that we return to those goals and continue to measure their success. So in the middle of, if it's like I'll often do 8 session packages. Maybe session 4, okay, so let's return to those. Let me read those again. Are we still on the right track? How are we doing towards that? Um, and so having them always know where they are against where they wanted to be. Usually what we'll find too is that, like they've met that right away, like just because so much of the challenge for couples is related to communication and conflict. How do we communicate? And then how do we resolve the conflicts that we're getting into? So, I mean, it's probably almost everybody um, that I've seen has those two. So, setting expectations, having them oriented towards goals. And then I would say with the premarital coaching, I use an assessment called Prepare and Enrich. It's a very highly researched assessment tool. I think it might have been rooted in Christianity, but they've definitely expanded. So they have versions, atheist versions, Jewish, Muslim, interfaith. They've got those versions, and then that provides actually feedback. So they get feedback on all these different areas of their relationships, from finances, um, sexual intimacy, how they relate to their family and friends, parenting, lifestyle habits, health, communication, conflict, spirituality. So then they actually get this information like, wow, oh, yeah. I mean, that usually reflects what they already know inside, but it also gives sort of a talking point. And then we'll go through each of those areas and facilitate conversation. So I think there's probably more I can respond to with this.
No, but I really appreciate you
Yeah.
sharing very practical tips, especially about the intake form. I guess coaches are always curious about other coaches' practices, right? So, what do other
Yeah.
practitioners do, and what I can take into my work? What I especially loved about your intake form is that the questions that you listed were around the vision of a couple. Like,
Yes.
similarly, when we work with teams, it's not about what do you think, and what do you think, and what do you think, right? So, it's
Yes.
about us as a team, as an entity. And I think it's even this intake form, it's a great opportunity for a couple to see themselves as one, right?
Yes.
Not like, what do I want and what does he or she wants?
Yes. And I will ask too when I first meet with them, I'll say, did you fill these out together? And it's
Okay.
also like indicative of where they're at because sometimes they'll take my link and they'll each fill it out separately. And so I'll get two intake forms. I'm like, okay, so that's interesting. So they're used to, they have their own, and we need to bring it together. And so then reading each one of them, okay, do you agree with that one? What do you think about that one? And then sometimes I'll get the information that like the wife filled it out or the husband filled it out. And then that's also information. So I think the other thing I just want to share is we really use ourselves I think in all coaching, but for sure with couples, because you're sort of holding like you're kind of getting a picture of who these people are. So you do have to hold where they're going, right? So the vision of where they want to go, but then also what they're bringing. You know, just like when you shared about your team coaching, how you could feel there was these elephants that like you feel that, you know, and you get a sense, okay, wait, something's going on with this person in the relationship. Okay, what's going on with this person? Because each person brings their whole world with them, their whole family system. So that's also helpful to know family systems is really, really important, very, very helpful as more training for a coach who wants to go into couples work. So I'm always sort of looking at what is this person's world bringing in and what's this person's world bringing in? How is that in conflict? Um, I'm just reminded of there's another imago therapy is a very popular
Okay.
type of therapy for couples that would probably be beneficial if a coach wanted to move into the couples world, and that's understanding just how the dynamics of two people come together, like why we get attracted to certain people and what that might say about our own unfinished business. It's gets pretty deep, and so a coach would need to be really comfortable going to those, you know, deeper places to just really understand uh, why a couple is interacting as they are. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, there's more I could share, but I'll
Yeah, yeah. And thank you
your
so much for
responses.
sharing because as I said in the beginning, it's really complex to be in that environment. And I really love what you said about using yourself as a tool. That's pretty much our philosophy and what I personally believe in and what I share with our coaches in training. Could you give a few more maybe practical examples of what you mean by when you say that you need to put your whole self into this work? So I'm hearing that that's about using your intuition probably, right? And
Yes.
sensing, not just listening to the words, right? Because if a coach can only listen at the word level and they miss maybe some nonverbal communication or they miss, I don't know, like tension in the room, right? I think that's such a huge
Yeah.
layer of work that is crucial and that may not be addressed.
Great question. Yeah, so intuition, very important. And I think this is really about the basic ICF competency of presence, the
Mhm.
ability to be present, to be in touch and to be aware of what's going on. And I just want to bring in emotional intelligence to this because, so emotional intelligence, we really see that as when you have emotional intelligence, you can manage your emotions, right? You don't let them leak out on other people. You're aware of what's going on. Having an understanding of different feelings is very important, especially with, families and couples, because, with work, we're not really there to get our deep needs, emotional needs met in a business, but in a couple you are. And so so I really use myself. I observe what's going on with their faces, and I do most of my coaching now over Zoom, and it still works. You could still observe. And then I notice myself. So, an example with a couple that I saw who actually ended up breaking up. They just got engaged and they decided to break up. And in the session, I was aware of feeling just so there was so much tension. I felt angry, and I knew that there was nothing I was angry about in that case. And so I could see that as sort of like a reflection of what I might have been sensing or picking up. So having tools like even like a list of feelings, because not everybody knows how to verbalize their feelings, and more so men, don't really get trained in that. So I'll text. So I'm working with people on Zoom. I'll send a text with like an image of some feeling words. And then I ask them to look at that list and just see, can you name any of those feelings that are going on? So when I feel a lot, I ask them to name what's going on. And that will often help really bridge and communicate, because communication with a couple is on the emotional feeling level. So we sort of drop down to that. So using tools, so using myself as a tool, but then also using handouts, something that they can actually just point to and look at. Um, I think I might have missed another aspect of your question in my excitement.
No, that's okay. I think we're just going with the flow. And as I'm
Yeah.
listening, I just have like five different directions I want to
Okay.
take this conversation because it all sounds so exciting. I just recorded an episode on emotional intelligence coaching maybe last week.
Yeah.
Um, and I totally believe that emotions have place in coaching that,
Yeah.
and I think I still occasionally hear some coaches really cautious about emotion work and who believe for some reason that emotions belong in therapy and not in coaching. So
Mhm.
I'm really happy again
Yeah.
to hear you address this, right? But I'm
Yeah.
curious about this thing. Have you ever experienced feeling triggered by something that people were sharing? Because I believe when they talk about family or a couple or relationship, and um, there are a lot of factors, right? Like values or upbringing or certain things that we hold dear as well, and then something that we hear maybe in contradiction to what we believe. And yeah, so I see you're nodding your head, so probably you have
Yeah.
some examples or maybe a lot of examples. So over to you.
Yeah. I no, I do. I have like three examples that came up. Oh my gosh. I mean, so in general, I would say that I'm a type of person, like just who I am.
Mhm.
I like to be open. I'm very curious. I value openness. I don't have any particular like agenda or opinion about how a couple wants to live their life. Um, so that said, I think that is a quality that makes me skilled and probably ensures that clients trust me more, because I don't have an agenda or I'm not judgmental about that. But when you said triggered, I'm Jewish, and I had a couple who one just had some very it was political and it related to Israel and just some stuff that's going on. And it was a little, I wouldn't say it was totally anti-Semitic, but it sort of had that flavor. That was very hard because I had to, it's like, it's not about me, but I was also clearly had a reaction because as you can tell, I'm very, I have like passion on my face and emotion on my face. And so the way I navigated that one was to just like kind of presence myself and just say, well, I just want to name, here's what's going on for me with that comment. And I just had to name it. And I don't know that that was the right thing to do, but I had to do that and then sort of redirect. But let's redirect where we're really going with the two of you together. So naming it, naming my own trigger, and then helped me just sort of identify to put it away. And then, okay, but let's go here. And then I just want to share another one with a couple who just had a baby. And that is like one of the hardest times for couples is when a baby is, I think it's under 5 years old with kids under 5 years old. And the husband said something to the wife related to how she was being, and it really pissed me off. And I felt like fighting for her. I mean, I kind of got this like feminine, like mother protection energy, and we have really, really high trust. This couple, I've seen them for a few years now. Um, and so it got a little messy. And I apologized because I really like came up and kind of protected her. And and he was great. And he just said to me, he's like, well, thank you for sharing. I really want to know what my wife thinks. And I was like, oh, what a great guy. And I just backed up. I just breathed. I took notes for myself. And then at the end, I acknowledged that I was a little triggered and and we repaired and we moved on.
And
So
as we are having this practitioner to practitioner conversation, Jillian, I think from my perspective, these were very courageous and really helpful things to do, naming certain feelings or certain attitudes or certain things, acknowledging that you've been triggered, apologizing. I think you acted as a role model of conversations that are so important to have in a couple. And because that came from you, and they were able to be part of that conversation, they were part of that conversation, right? I think it kind of gave everyone permission to do the same or take it as a normal behavior. Like these are the
yeah.
things that you sometimes feel, and you can share these feelings when you have them if there's trust in the room, right?
I really appreciate you saying that. Thank you for reflecting that back. And it also reminds me of just something else I'd like to share about boundaries. Because for a coach, and I think often, therapist, a coach, a social worker, like this profession, we tend to be people who want to help. The amount of people that I've talked to who want to be coaches, like, oh, I really just want to help people, blah, blah, blah. Which is not really the business of coaching. It's like but it's that sort of that personality aspect of us, which personally for me, I'm always working on my the boundaries, like what I'm responsible for, what I'm not responsible for. And that is something that really comes up. So if a coach wants to work in couples, to know that your sense of boundaries, it's just a little more challenging to know like there's sort of that feeling of like, oh, I can help save this couple, but like, no, you can't. You can facilitate conversation, but you really they're going to do what they do. You know, they might get divorced, they might break up.
I can relate to this so much. And
Hmm.
tell you what, just literally yesterday, I recorded my audio podcast episode that was exactly about responsibilities of
Yep.
coaches and clients, and boundary was part of that. And I voiced almost the same thing. I was wondering why so many coaches bring the questions of responsibility to supervision. Why do they
Mhm.
even have a question about this? Because we have code of ethics, right? It doesn't matter
Yeah,
like whether it's ICF code of ethics or the global code of ethics that's used for EMCC and Association for Coaching. All these code of ethics outline responsibilities of the parts very clearly. So why do
yeah,
coaches keep having questions about that when it's black and white, right? And I think one of my
mm,
hypotheses were that coaching attracts helpers,
yep,
people who care
yep,
and people who want to get involved with other people, and
yep,
it's not a transactional kind of thing, right, where you just, I don't know, do this simple exchange and you disengage completely.
yeah. Yeah, it's a thing. I mean, it's really a thing is
Yeah.
and I think it's kind of like um a challenge of the trade, right? Is to step back and to really empower because the more you're able to, especially with coaching, I think this is something I see that really differentiates coaches versus therapists. I feel like this is my own personal opinion,
Sure.
but I feel like sometimes therapists get a little bit more emotionally kind of tangled. It can be really challenging, very, very challenging for me too. And the point of coaching, what I find is when people get coach training, it's so clearly like, I'm just asking you question, we're facilitating your emergence. But I think it's that like I want to be important. I want to help. I want to be like that's how I know I do a good job. I matter. They need
Validation. I
validation.
think
Yeah.
so many coaches get validation through
Yeah.
client
Yes.
results or progress,
Yeah.
right? Even unconsciously. Yeah.
Totally.
And that's a
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. And I had that one, I mean, this is such a teaching learning moment for me that I had this premarital, they bought a package. We met one time and there was so much hostility in the room. I mean, it really like if I was just a person talking to them, I'd be like, why are you getting married? You seem to hate each other, but I'm, have a role to help them understand. And so we decided we were going to do individual sessions to get, so I met with the one fiance and then I met with the other fiance. And what I learned from that was they really weren't interested in building a relationship together. And there had been so many red flags they stepped over that this was sort of like they were kind of like on a moving escalator toward marriage, but it really wasn't what they wanted with each other. And they decided after our third session that they broke up. And I was
I think
like,
you saved them years of life.
I mean, that was something, at first I was like, oh, did I do a bad job? If I did a better job, would they be together? But then, in talking to them, I did some follow-up afterwards and they were appreciative, but that's hard. Like what a hard decision. Like you get engaged, you buy a ring, you have all the expectations and the magical moment and then you break up and better in the long run, but not easy.
Jillian, what is your self-care routine? I think especially when we work with couples, I think it's just for all coaches, should be mandatory. Like self-care is a responsibility,
Yeah.
like non-negotiable. But I really would love to know how you kind of, recharge.
So that's a great question. And I would say for me, it's like less about recharging and more about discharging. Because I
Okay.
get like a lot of energy from working with people, but because of I have more diffuse boundaries, meaning that I more feel, I'm very sensitive. I feel a lot of other people's like stuff. And so for me, like I have to discharge the energies. Um, every time I've ever seen like a Reiki healer or a shaman or like all these different things I do, they're always like, you have to do more. discharging. Certain things that I've been recommended to do that I do. Sometimes I don't, but like taking a saltwater bath supposedly helps to kind of clear the energy. So doing that at night, I have little rituals that I do that are a little bit more spiritual. I have I have sage that I use when I like start sessions.
What was that? That
Oh,
looks
sage.
really. Oh,
The sage
sage.
stick.
Right.
So just
Okay.
that, that I don't know if it really works. I mean, native people have been using this for thousands of years, so
As long as it
probably
works for
has,
you.
yeah. And then I have friends. I have a lot of friends who are coaches and therapists, and I send a lot of voice memos at the end of my day, just sending a message, here's how I'm feeling. Whoa, that was hard. Oh my God, it was amazing. And then walking. I take a lot of walks after sessions. There's also like the shaking it off, like getting things off your body, dancing, moving, emotional discharge. So,
Yeah. Right.
yeah.
Okay. You mentioned earlier some skills that couples build in your sessions, and you refer to skills, but I was really curious, what are some of those skills? Again, in case we have any people listening who might be interested or who might see the value in trying a couples therapy, they might also be curious to hear what skills you are referring to.
Um, so for couples, um, I'm gonna I think answer in two ways. Um, the skill of understanding communication patterns. So understanding how you're communicating, meaning, so we communicate with our tone, with our words, with our looks. Um, so being able to identify and know what's going on, like what are you feeling, and then what do you want? Um, Assertiveness, that's like the name of it, but assertiveness is really being able to ask for the things that you want and need. Um, Having each couple be able to do that. So often instead of asking for what you want, it comes out as blame, like, or complaint, or frustration, or there's sort of like a self-fulfilling prophecy for one of the couple's members that are like, I can't ever get what I need. I'm alone and on my own. Some of those deeper beliefs that predict or influence how communication happens. So in the sessions, we practice like, what are you feeling? And then what are you wanting? And then also listening. So being able to listen and just hold the other person's desires, communication, feelings without needing to respond and react so quickly. Um, so those two skills of listening, communicating, and then even like understanding the importance of physical contact, um, knowing when holding hands, often with couple, I'll tell them to hold hands and see what that does, because our physical connection can
Mhm.
really soothe ourselves, hugging until you're relaxed, being able to hold your partner until they feel calmed. Um, and then those are two really so the one from Gottman that I think is really put, so there's 7 principles that they outline in their books and all their programs. One of them is nurturing your fondness and admiration. And that's a skill. It's like I think of it as like savoring and the process of like being in awe. So even like we're not a couple, but like I can look at you on the screen and like be in awe of who you are. I could sort of like savor your face, your hair. And so that being able to really like hold your partner with a sense of real admiration and fondness
Yeah. I think it
is really
requires
great.
a lot of intentionality, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just being a good partner. It doesn't, as we always say in team coaching, just because you put people in the same room doesn't make them a team, even if you call them a team, right?
Yes.
And very similar
Yeah.
thing seems to apply to couples or marriages.
Yeah, and I want to say one more thing that I mean, if we met in 5 years from now, I might have a different perspective. And 5 years earlier, I would have definitely had a different perspective. I really used to think that like you could change someone, even in the dating process. Like you could find someone with good potential and then just change them. You can't change someone. You can't change your partner. Like you can express how you feel about their behaviors or actions, but you really can't go into a marriage like thinking like I'm going to change this person. You
No,
have to have acceptance. You know, there might be things that you guys work
it
on
is.
changing together, but that has to be a real mutual um whew, that's a tough
You
one.
know, Jillian, with divorce rates being so high in so many countries around the world, I do see a lot of value in the
Yeah.
work that you do,
Yeah.
educating couples that being a couple and being a partner in the couple, and serving this relationship and being kind of able to put effort and intentionality into this process. Even this whole education, I think it's contributing
Yeah.
greatly to success of families.
Yeah. I feel that way. I That's one of the reasons why I love doing it. And and also like divorce, you know, back in the old days, like you got married to like have land, right? Or like to combine kingdoms, like for, you know, and it's really there's a lot of you know, different reasons why people might, you know, get married. And I think it's like it's so some people might get married because it's convenient or they want to have a sense of safety or they believe in the tradition or family, but maybe they don't get all their emotional needs met. And that's also like fine. There's lots of different
Yeah.
paths. And I think just getting educated, reading, understanding lots of different paths, different cultural expectations too is
Yeah.
helpful. So I really love what you're doing and that you're providing this space for coaches to, you know, explore other options and really learn about all things coaching. So I really appreciate the opportunity to come on your show.
Thanks for sharing. I think, I see so many newer coaches wondering which niche should I choose? And they're taking this question so seriously, as
Yeah.
if it's going to be carved in stone and they're never ever gonna change the niche in their life. It's like they commit to one niche till the end of their life. But
Yeah.
I think I know from experience and from what I observe that it's totally fine for a coach to change their niches. And
Yeah.
just in case you get interested in doing a different work, you can do a different work. And I think it's so important to listen to each other, right? To understand a bit more in depth about what do coaches do in different niches, and to understand that I have a lot of skills already that can enable me to do this work. And maybe there is an extra bit I need to learn and practice just to
Yeah.
do it better, to
Yeah.
take better care of my clients. Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think this is what excites me really, this um, idea that you can change paths and you can follow your spark and you
Mm,
can pivot. And I just
I love
find
that.
this whole idea very appealing.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's been a challenge for me with the niche conversation. And I feel like that's more driven by marketing and business building, you
Which
know? And
coaches are not good at typically.
yeah, because you don't go into it. It's like, I want to build a business of it. No, it's like you go in because you love people and you want to
Yeah.
help create change. Yeah, and that's, you know, and that's couples premarital. That's not even really my main niche. You know, I'm also like, I do a lot of work with women on the expression of anger. I lead workshops and I like that's a thing, but I think what you're sharing, it's like it's okay. It's okay to choose something, figure it out, go where your passion lies. So, and it's okay.
Well, that's what I believe.
Yeah.
At least now, maybe five
At least
years from
now.
now, I'm gonna say different things.
Yeah.
And I um acknowledge this may happen, and I have acceptance with the fact that 5 years later, I may change my opinion about this.
I also think, maybe next year I'll be like, no, you got to do a niche. That's really what makes it work. Maybe I'll be saying that right now, not so much, but yeah.
Thanks so much, Jillian. It was really exciting. I enjoyed the conversation, all the examples, and I'm sure it's going to be a valuable conversation to anyone who decides to listen to it. Thank you so much for your time. So if you want to know more about Jillian and her work, all the links are in the episode description. Please follow the links, get in contact with Jillian, and learn more about her work.